Hi, everybody. Welcome to English Digest. I'm Tom.
Hi, I'm Stephanie.
And today is our Taiwan unit, and we're going to be going down south to Tainan. And the title of our article for today is Tainan 400, From Past to Palate. Of course, here the 400 refers to the age of Tainan. It's been around for quite some time. It's an old city, 4,000 years. No, not 4,000, 400 years. But in any case, we're going there to explore the past and the present, although we've got a little bit of a pun in the title here, From Past to Palate. Palate refers to your mouth and eating.
It's cute because Tainan is known for its food. We're going to be spending day 2, at least, talking about some of the Tainan cuisine that you can find down there. I have been to Tainan and tried some of these dishes, so that'll be fun. But first, we're going to be talking about Tainan itself and talking about some of its history. So let's get started. We're going to listen to the article and then we'll be back.
Welcome to Tainan, one of Taiwan's oldest and liveliest cities. Often called Taiwan's historical capital, Tainan presents a mix of timeless landmarks. As we walk through its streets, we journey across 3 distinct eras, each revealing the city's deep-rooted heritage. Let's go back 4 centuries to when Tainan was in its early stages. The Anping district, a historical center, captures the origins of the city. In 1624, the Dutch established Fort Zeelandia, marking their dominance and the region's active commerce. However, in 1662, Zheng Chonggung took back the territory and named it Anping. This once powerful fortress evolved into what we now know as Anping Old Fort. As you venture further into Anping, you'll encounter the former Tate & Company merchant house. This establishment bears witness to Tainan's trade peak during the 19th century Qing era. Not far from there is the Eternal Golden Castle. Its walls narrate stories of military might, built specifically to defend against the Japanese invasion. To protect Tainan, which was then the capital of Taiwan, the Qing dynasty also constructed 14 grand gates around the city. Though many have disappeared over time, 4 sturdy gates remain, attracting history lovers with their silent tales. During the Japanese colonial period, the city's main area shifted to the modern Zhongxi district. The restored Hayashi department store welcomes visitors with its vintage elevator, leading to a Japanese rooftop shrine. Surrounding it is the National Museum of Taiwan Literature, originally constructed to house the government during the Japanese colonial period. Reopened in 2003 after restoration, the museum now frequently hosts cultural exhibitions, appealing to both literature and history admirers.
Okay, folks, this is our Taiwan unit. We're going to spend the next couple of days talking about the famous city of Tainan. So what do? Let's look at the title first. Tom kind of mentioned this. It's a clever title by our authors. Tainan 400, of course, refers to how old the city is. They're going to be celebrating their 400th anniversary. And we're going to talk about its past to the palate. Palate here refers to a person's appreciation of how something tastes, the flavor of food. If someone is described as having a good palate, especially chefs are described as having a good palate, then they can tell the difference between when certain ingredients are combined together and really taste good together or when they don't. So if you have a good palate, you're probably somebody who likes to dine on fine foods. Maybe you're even what they call a foodie, someone who likes to go out there and explore new dishes by famous chefs. Right now, though, we're going to get back to Taiwan. We're going to welcome you to Tainan. It's one of Taiwan's oldest and liveliest cities. There's a lot to see if you go down there as a tourist. I went there for a day of work, and I stayed overnight because I wanted to, since I was down there, I wanted to walk around and check out the place myself. And there are a lot of things to see if you're a tourist especially.
Yes, I've been to Tainan many times myself, but when preparing for today's lesson, I realized that there are still a lot of things in Tainan that I have not experienced, and I'm looking forward to going down there again. So let's look at the first paragraph here. It says, Welcome to Tainan, one of Taiwan's oldest and liveliest cities. Indeed, it is an old city. It's been around for 400 years, and it's very lively. I do recall that when you're in Tainan walking around, it is a very lively place. There are people walking all over the place. There are scooters zooming around all over the place. So indeed, it is very active, very bustling, and it's a very lively city, as we call it.
They're very friendly, too. I thought they were really great. I was afraid because some of my friends had said, oh, they only speak Taiwanese. That's not true. Their Mandarin is great, and they were so helpful to me because I got lost a couple times, and they were so quick to want to help me out and put me in the right direction. So I found the people down there very, very warm.
Well, they do say that people down south are friendlier than the people up north, but in my experience, I think they're about equal, but that's, of course, my own experience. But in any case, we go on to the next sentence here. It says, Often called Taiwan's historical capital, Tainan presents a mix of timeless landmarks. Indeed, it's called the historical capital of Taiwan, whereas Taipei is the political capital and the economic capital of Taiwan. But Tainan, of course, is more history-oriented. Again, it has a mix of timeless landmarks. Indeed, there are lots of old buildings and arches and temples there that you can check out.
Yeah, what's that one tower called? Chirkan Tower?
Chirkan Tower, yeah.
Yeah, that was kind of cool. Anyway, we're going to look at some of its heritage. So as you walk through its streets, you're going to journey across 3 distinct eras. Era is a period of time. We use this a lot to talk about different types of periods in time. It could be the era of the radio or the era of the computer. We use it like that too, but here it's just a specific time period. You can pronounce it era or era. Era is also okay, but era are both fine. Each reveals these 3 distinct eras, each revealing the city's deep-rooted heritage as you walk through the street. So when you talk about a place's heritage, you're talking about its past that has been passed down from generation to generation. You can have a family heritage. Maybe your family heritage includes traditions of things you eat, places you go, but also where your ancestors came from. Where did your grandparents and great-great-grandparents come from originally? All of those things make up a person's heritage or a place's heritage.
Exactly. So, of course, it has a lot of heritage there, lots of things that have been passed down from older generations. And now we're going to go back 4 centuries. So let's go back 4 centuries or 400 years to when Tainan was in its early stages, when it was a young city. The Anping district, a historical center, captures the origins of the city. So like all cities and prefectures or counties in Taiwan, there are different districts. And this is the Anping district, which is a chu in Chinese. And it's a historical center. What that means, that's where all the old buildings are and a place you can check it out. There's probably even a history museum there or two. And it captures the origins of the city. So when you're there, you'll be able to feel like you were actually in Tainan 400 years ago.
Ooh, that's kind of cool. I love historical things and I love historical buildings. So this is a district, the Anping district, the historical center. And like Tom said, it captures the origins of the city. You can see how the city first got started. That's what that means. So in 1624, the Dutch established a fort called Zeelandia. The Dutch, if you refer to Dutch people, it just means the people that are from the Netherlands. They don't say, there's not an adjective saying they're Netherlandians or something. For some reason, we call them Dutch, although it doesn't really sound like the Netherlands too much, does it? So they came to Taiwan back in 1624, and that's when they built or established a fort. What's a fort? It's kind of a military or very... it's a a building or a structure where you can defend something. I always think of a fort as a place where usually a military is positioned to watch out for invaders or your enemies coming to attack a city or a place. When Tom and I were growing up, we used to build forts in the backyard with, pieces of wood that we would find. We would dig in the ground in my backyard. We had an extra piece of property that my parents would let us just play on, just to play in. But this is an official fort. And usually if you go see some of these forts, especially in Taiwan, they've kind of turned into tourist attractions. But you can see what it used to look like. It's usually a strategic position. They put it somewhere where they can see if invaders or enemies are coming from the sea to attack a certain place. If you establish something, you set it up, you organize it, you get it going. So that's where the Dutch or the folks from the Netherlands came in 1624 and they thought, this is a good area to build a fort.
Right, and by establishing that fort or building it, setting it up, it marks their dominance in the region. And, of course, it marked their dominance and the region's active commerce. So at the time, the Dutch controlled a lot of trade going on in this part of the world. Dominance just refers to when you're in a dominant position or a position of power, a position of control. And later, of course, the Dutch were kicked out. People got sick of their tulips and their wooden shoes and their windmills and stuff like that. So they said, get out of here, Vamoose. We don't want you anymore. And then I think either the Spanish came or the Japanese. I'm not quite sure. I get my history mixed up a bit here. But in any case, they were dominant at the time they had dominance.
That's right. You usually have a dominant hand or a dominant eye where it's just a little stronger than the other one. For example, people who play basketball or baseball usually have a dominant hand. Or golfers even. You have one arm, I guess, one side of your body that's stronger than the other. So we'll use it like that too. So they wanted to mark their dominance and the region's active commerce. Commerce is just the trade of goods. So people trading goods or maybe buying and selling goods, that's commerce. However, in 1662, Zheng Qianggong took back the territory. He grabbed it back from the Dutch and named it Anping. So this once powerful fortress, fort is kind of short for fortress, to be honest. So fortress, fort, you can use either one, evolved or changed slowly over time into what we now know as the Anping Old Fort. That's what its current name is.
And we'll continue with our explanation in just a couple of seconds, but right now we're going to listen to our Chinese teacher.
听众朋友大家好，我是安娜，我们今天要开始带大家去台南玩2天哦。其实我们一听到台南就想说，那是一个文化古都，可是东西好好吃，对不对？对啊，没错，其实台南最有名大概就是它的文化，还有它也是美食天堂啦。好，所以我们在第一天的文章当中，先回顾一下台南的历史跟文化。所以在文章的第一段的时候啊，其实就有提到台南其实常被称为台湾的历史之都，因为在台南就有各种这个历久不衰的一些地标 landmarks。好，那在我们说的这一句在第一段第二句的地方，其实它是一个分词构句哦，因为句子的一开始啊，我们看到的是 often called， 通常被称为，谁被称为呢？如果我们看到句首是 PP 或者是 ING 这个所谓的现在分词或过去分词的时候，其实它真正的主词就是后面逗点之后的主词。如果我们今天还原的话，它本来应该讲的是 Tainan is often called Taiwan's historical capital。这个台南常常被称为台湾的历史之都嘛。那现在因为逗点之后的 AND 又是在介绍台南，所以干脆连接词省略，主词也省略啦。那这样子文意就会很顺。所以分词构句其实它是一个简化的概念，它让文意是非常通顺流畅的。好，所以我们来看一下 这边第二句有个分词构句，那总而言之呢，就是台南就是历史之都，然后有很多呢各种历久不衰的地标，所以如果我们去台南的话，其实就可以穿越3个不同的时代哦。在第一段第3句这个地方，我们在句子中间逗点之后看到的动词 ing revealing， 其实它也算是一种句子的简化。那逗点之后本来省略的是 and。Each， 那 each 指的就是前面的所谓的 era， 就是这个所谓的时代。那每一个时代就会揭露出 reveals 啊，本来这个整个的动词就是已经顺着下来 and each era， 而每一个时代都揭露出了一个不同的一些遗产，所以也是要顺着有一种动感，然后文意的流畅，把连接词省略之后，动词直接变成 ing。好，所以接下来我们就来看一下啦。第一个时代呢，就是4个世纪之前，也就是400年前，当时台南还在早期的阶段，这就是很有名的那个安平区哦。安平区这个地方呢，其实是整个台南的一个 origin， 它的起源哦。因为当时在西元1624年的时候，1624年，当时荷兰人就建立了热兰遮城。那这个地方呢，当然就是标记他们的统治的地位，还有在安平区那个地方活跃的一个商业。好，所以最后面呢，我们看到第2段的第5句这个地方，它也有句子简化。看到这个句子简化很特别的地方是 what代替到最后面的 what， 其实它是一个所谓的复合关代。复合关代的意思就是我们没有看到先行词，但是我们看到了有一个这个关系子句感受的东西，在这里我们可以把 what 先代换成 something that。 所以最后一句他说这个热兰遮城啊，也就是安平区这个地方呢，它曾经很强大的堡垒就演变成我们现在所知道的安平古堡。 evolve into 本来会要有一个受词嘛，那受词如果给它一个 something， 后面又有接着 we now know as， 又有来个句子，所以其实它应该是一个关系子句。那这个关系子句的 what 就是复合关代，也就是把先行词包含进去的关系词。
We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Welcome back, everybody. Let's continue to talk about Tainan. We're kind of focusing on the historical aspect of Tainan. In our next program, we'll talk more about the food. And we went back about 400 years to 1624. The Dutch set up or established Fort Zeelandia. They were dominant in the region, but then in 1662, sometime later, Zheng Chenggong took back the territory and renamed it Anping. Remember, Zheng Chenggong is that hero that came and kicked the Dutch out of Taiwan. He's also known as Kisinga or Koksinga in English. Most people will probably be familiar with that name, although I'm sure most of you probably don't know what we're talking about. Here, of course, he's referred to as Zheng Chenggong. And this once powerful fortress evolved into what we now know as Anping Old Fort. So you can go check it out, and there are places to eat and small alleys to explore as well. Now, moving on now to the third paragraph, it says, as you venture further into Anping, you'll encounter the former Tate & Company merchant house. So that's an historical structure there. If it's a merchant house, it has to do with people who sell things, probably through trade, and it's a merchant house, so it was set up probably to do business with the locals.
Yeah, we would probably just call it a department store nowadays, but a merchant house back then, people who were trading different goods and services, they would set up there. And that's where they did business. This establishment bears witness to Tainan's trade peak during the 19th century Qing era. So if something's at its peak, it's at highest level, that's when the trade was really very successful and prosperous. So if you bear witness to something, it just means you are there to say that something is true, that you saw it, you know that it's a fact, so you bear witness to it. That's what that phrase there means. So Tainan's trade peak was very, very was flourishing, you could say, back in the 19th century. That's 1800s for those of you out there during the Qing era. Not far from there, not far from the former Tate and Company merchant house, you can see something called the Eternal Golden Castle. I think I missed this when I was down there. I didn't see this. Eternal just means forever. It lasts forever. It will exist forever. If love is eternal, it goes on and on and on, and it never dies. We use eternity to talk about life after death. Many people think life goes on forever. After we die, we just turn into a different version of ourselves. Eternal is an adjective that describes eternity, but here it's called the Eternal Golden Castle. Did you ever see this, Tom?
I don't recall seeing this, so there's another excuse for me to go down to Tainan as soon as possible. And its walls narrate stories of military might, built specifically to defend against the Japanese invasion. So if you narrate something, of course, you describe something, you tell a story. And so inside this golden castle, you can see old stories of military campaigns. And this structure was built specifically, its specific goal was to defend against the Japanese invasion. Of course, the Japanese came into Taiwan in 1895. And of course, people in Taiwan did not want those Japanese to come here. Of course, they didn't want to be forced to eat sushi and things like that. No, you guys get out of here. Our food is good enough. We don't need your food. But they failed, of course, and the Japanese, of course, controlled Taiwan for 50 years. But if you defend something, that means you try to stop someone from hurting you or from attacking you.
You know, as I look at this, I'm thinking, I did see this place, but I don't remember it being called Eternal Golden Castle. I guess I was maybe looking at more of the Chinese when I was down there. It's a place that you walk into and they have halls of all of these, they're mannequins, so they're like dummies, and they have dressed them in the military uniforms of different groups, and they have these awesome weapons from long ago. It's kind of it's very intimidating, but you can walk and see through history and over time what they wore and how they defended themselves. If you use this word narrate, it just means to tell a story. So it's like walking down, it's kind of a hall to me, but you walk along the walls and you just see all of these military men. Of course, they're dummies. They're not real. And you can read about them. They have little pieces of history that it's like going to a museum, really. Little pieces of history about all of them. So it was built specifically to defend against the Japanese invasion. You can also defend a friend. Maybe someone accuses your friend of cheating on a test, and you know your friend didn't. You could defend them and say, hey, that's not right. You're wrong. They're good people. So you can speak out in favor of somebody or, defend them that way. You can say, no, what you just said is wrong. That's not true. But here, I think they mean you're resisting an attack from an enemy force.
Okay, so of course it was built to defend against the Japanese and to protect Tainan, which was then the capital of Taiwan. The Qing dynasty also constructed 14 grand gates around the city.
Cool.
Yes, lots of cities and towns in Taiwan have these gates, which used to have walls attached to them. There are still a few gates standing here in Taipei. There's one down in Hengchuan, I believe, as well. And yes, indeed, there were 14 grand gates around Tainan. And though many have disappeared over time, 4 sturdy gates remain. Sturdy just means strong. They're still standing quite well. And these gates attract history lovers with their silent tales. You can't really read any stories about the gates, but you can imagine what happened when those gates were standing.
It's kind of cool because those gates can't talk to you. And so as you look at them, they're kind of silent, but you see stories as you just look at those big gates. I wish we had more of our history that had survived. But people are too quick to take down old buildings and build something new.
Those developers, yeah.
I hate that. So moving on to the final paragraph, it says, during the Japanese colonial period, the city's main area shifted to the modern Zhongxi district. So here's another district. And of course, you can imagine more modern districts would offer a lot of shopping because shopping is fun. If you restore something, let's look. Restored is actually an adjective, but here we're going to talk about the verb to restore. It means to bring back something to its original state so that it looks as good as new. Sometimes people will buy old cars or motorcycles and restore them so that they look like they're new again, even though they're kind of cool and they're old. So this restored Hayashi department store welcomes visitors with its vintage elevator. If something's vintage, it's from the past. It's not really antiques. Well, they use it in different ways. Antique means it's at least 100 years old. Vintage just means it's really old. A lot of vintage fashion is popular these days. But this is a vintage elevator, an elevator that was used long ago. I love seeing those sorts of things because our technology has changed a lot. It's fun to see how they used to, go up and down in an elevator before modern technology came around.
Sure, and that elevator will lead to a shrine on the roof. It's a rooftop shrine, a Japanese rooftop shrine. Of course, lots of Japanese temples are referred to as shrines. Or if it's a really small temple with only one deity inside it, it could be referred to as a shrine. It's kind of small usually. And surrounding it is the National Museum of Taiwan Literature, originally constructed to house the government during the Japanese colonial period. Now, that place I have been to. I think it's on a big circle in Tainan somewhere. It's just north of the Confucius Temple in Tainan. And yes, indeed, that's a museum there. And, of course, they built it originally to house the government when the Japanese were in charge. The government is no longer conducting their business there.
Yeah, so that's where the Japanese government officials used to do their work. And now it's a wonderful museum. They reopened it back in 2003 or 2003 after they restored it. Restoration is the noun form of the verb to restore. And of course, restored is an adjective. So they made it look like new again, and they reopened it, and now it frequently hosts cultural exhibitions. So this is a place you'd go down to see a special exhibition. And it's appealing to this building itself, or museum, is appealing to both literature and history admirers. So if you're into that sort of thing, you're going to love this. Going to love hearing more about Tainan too. But right now, guys, we're out of time. We're going to listen one more time to our Chinese teacher.
所以接下来我们到了第3段，又更进一步的，其实我们探访安平的时候，就会看到一个英商德记洋行。那这个贸易商行呢，则是见证当时台南在19世纪清军这个清朝时代的一个贸易巅峰。然后当地呢，我们就会看到义载京城义载京城就是在这附近。不过第3段的第3句特别注意，它是一个地方副词放句首的倒装哦。真正的主词其实是在 be 动词的 is 之后的这个 the eternal golden castle 义载京城is not from here, is not from there. 我们把地方副词就放在句首，所以形成一个倒装句。好，那当然文意上其实也很通顺啦。不在那个地方的不远之处就是义在京城。那义在京城怎么样呢？当然它的城墙就讲述着军事力量的故事当时就是抵御日本人的入侵嘛。所以呢，清朝在那个地方城市的周围呢，就建造了14座很宏伟的城门。不过我们接下来看第3段这个第6句的地方，这里有一个分词构句哦。我们在句子当中中间逗点之后看到的 attracting 也是一个 and 连接词省略的分词构句，因为句子第一个动词是disappear 就是消失，而后面呢我们看到的 four sturdy gates remain， 另外剩下有4个很坚固的城门都还留着。那留着这个状态如何呢？留着其实同时就吸引了很多的历史爱好者，所以逗点之后本来要有一个 and 的连接词来连接后面的动词吸引，那么在这里呢，就直接让它顺利的这个动感方式的同时发生的留着而吸引很多人，所以 and 省略之后直接把 attract 换成 attracting。 那当然最后面呢，我们就提到第3个时代啦。在日本这个殖民台湾的这个时候，整个主要的区域就变成了现代中西区这个地方。然后我们知道林百货 这个很厉害的，这个很有名的，因为它有一个复古电梯哦。这个复古电梯就会通向一座日式的屋顶的神社。我们在最后一段这个地方可以先特别注意一下第二句的地方。第二句逗点之后的 leading 是一个关系子句的简化，逗点前面的先行词这个 vintage elevator 复古式的电梯才是真正的主角。这个电梯如何呢？逗点补充说明一下。Which leads to 它会引领大家到一个日式的神社。好，那最后面呢，接着的第三句我们也看到地方副词放句首的倒装哦 surrounding it， 而环绕在周围的 is 则是台湾文学博物馆。不过在这里为什么要地方副词放句首呢？不是为了强调地方副词啦，而是因为主词台湾文学馆后面还带着关系子句，要用来补充说明这个台湾文学馆有什么样的特色。所以逗点之后的 originally constructed 这里不是主动哦，这里是关系子句的简化。其实它省略的是 which was这两个字 which was constructed 当时被建造，原来是为了要收纳政府机构而建的。所以这个关系子句从 originally 一直到句尾可以整个括号起来。当然我们对于这个台南的了解除了文化之外还有美食哦，所以明天我们就要带大家去台南品尝美食。我是安娜，我们明天见。
That's it for today, everybody, but please stay tuned and join us again next time when we continue to talk about Tainan as it celebrates 400 of existence. From all of us here at English Digest, I am Tom.
I'm Stephanie.
Goodbye.
Bye.